But now what we want to do is undo a few times to restart, and I'm going to choose the spline stroke draw mode. This will allow me to place these along a spline. So let's look at our example here. We'll need to taper it a little bit. So what we can do is start a little bit smaller. And then scale up a bit. And then scale down. And hit escape. Now let's go ahead and hit the enter key. I'll undo that. And what we want to do is go to the brush options panel and change the spacing. It's a little bit too close together. So I'm thinking maybe 150 might be the best option here. Yep. So we're pretty close. Now the drawback here though is you can't really see a very good preview of exactly what it's going to look like. So it's a little bit more hit and miss using this option. It really just depends on how exact you have to be. If you're trying to line up your scales to match others, then yeah, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So using the curves tool might be a better option, or placing them one by one. So yeah, let's reduce the spacing just a bit, and we can maybe fade on edge. Okay, so you get the idea here. And also if I hit escape, it's going to drop that tool. I'll go back to our regular brush alpha, and we will go back to our move tool, and we can tweak this a bit if we need. We can also use the pose tool as well, just to tweak the shape. And now what I'm going to do is go back to this scale. I'm going to uncache it, and I'm going to hide everything else. So this time I want to create an object like this in the splines palette. So I'm going to come over here to the right hand side of the layer, drag that right into the spline palette, and you can see it's going to by default replicate it in a vertical fashion. We don't want that in this case. We want everything to be aligned along the z-axis in a horizontal fashion. So we'll drag our slider here, and we want to leave a little bit of a gap because our color palette in our image reference, we can see that there are indeed gaps in between. They don't just bump up against each other. You can also adjust these along more than just one at the same time, but again, we just want to move it along the z-axis, and that's it. So I hit OK. And once more, we want to be mindful of the poly count, so we want to reduce this down to, we're at least under 50K. We probably want to be a bit closer to maybe 10 or 20,000. And the reason is the performance can get a bit out of control if you're high on your poly count. So I hit OK. Let's go back to the body layer. And all we have to do to utilize this is just click on the thumbnail, and 3D Coat is going to invoke the curves tool. And you can see we have these little nodes or points. 3D Coat memorizes the last curve you created. So I'm going to clear all these, and I'm going to set my brush options back. Let's go back to 0. And our point, we can scale it by right clicking and dragging, so it's going to be based on your brush size. If you try to do that outside your model, 3D Coat's just going to navigate. So if you need to start outside the object or out in free space like this, you can use your bracket keys to increase or decrease the size. Okay, so let's create our first point here, scale up, second point, and third point. Now let's click Transform Curve at the very bottom of the Tool Options panel, so that it's going to apply this transformation to everything on the curve. We can see a bit of a preview of how it's going to be applied once we hit Apply or the Enter key. So I'm going to uncheck Transform Curve so that I can edit these points individually. If we need to squash or scale along a given axis, we can do that. We can also rotate that individual point. I'll click on this other node and rotate that. And in this instance, it might make sense to go ahead and create a layer, add some resolution to it, and then hit apply. So we'll step out of that tool, and we can see the result. We can hide the body. And so let me switch to the move tool. And again, I'm going to hold the control key to pull out along the normal. We can use the pose tool if we want to edit this with a lot more control or other sculpting tools. And then when we're done, we can merge this with the body layer if we want by coming to the right hand side and holding down the shift key and dragging that onto the body layer. Another option is you can always right click and then choose change parent. You have the option to pick in the viewport which object you want to use as your parent. Okay. Now what we want to do is look at using the primitives tool with this scale. So to do that, again, I probably want to create a new layer, and I'll choose the primitives tool. Let's go to our models palette and click on our low version. Let's place one off to the side here. So in our tool options panel, what I can do is click to place, and then it opens up these other options: scale to brush radius and use stroke direction. So I'll do that. And again, 3D Coat is going to place this wherever I click, and it's also going to scale it down, and it's also going to use the brush direction based on the normals under my brush. So you can see it placed it there. Now you notice how it placed it based on the rotation of the brush profile. So I can change that. I can make it actually point toward the front if I want. One way to do that obviously is to rotate the object, but the other way is, rather than going to your brush options panel, you can use your 9 and 0 key. Okay, until it's pointed in that direction, and then scale it down and just click. Now I want to check transform whole lattice. I can use this outer ring to rotate it. And then let me give my voxel layer a little bit of resolution, and I'll hit enter. I can step out and see what that looks like. It's about right. And go back to the primitives tool. And with the click to place still active, I can do that again. Let's scale the brush down and change the orientation here a bit. Transform whole lattice. Maybe rotate that this way. And if I like it, I'll just hit enter. You can speed up your process much faster than this, but I was just trying to demonstrate the different options that you can choose. So yeah, once you get used to working this way, you can place these scales rather quickly in successive order and be quite a bit more precise. So that's a quick look at different ways that you can use 3D Coat's tools to replicate an object along the surface of another. I hope you found it helpful. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.